I'm making a vegetable lasagna today, and I've got the pan started. I already did all of the grating and chopping. And you'll see when you read the recipe that I'm making larger than the recipe calls for, because I'm making a big one for a family. So I put in some olive oil to heat in the pan, and I've got mushrooms, onions and green corsican, or some call it bell pepper, and basil, minced garlic, because it calls for 3 cloves of chopped garlic, but my chopping was done for the day. And I have recipes for homemade tomato sauce, lasagna sauce. Mouth isn't working today, and it would take probably a couple of days to do it the way I want it done. So I cheated. Yes, the cardinal sin. I bought a jar. Never mind. I also have the egg noodles. They didn't have the ones that I like dry, so I bought them fresh. But I'll probably get a lot of the stuff out after I get rid of all of the vegetables that I'm dealing with. Okay, that's beginning to heat up, so could have turned that on first. Never mind. Let's get this out. I was thrilled to get the opportunity to make a lasagna. I've been wanting to do this for a long time, but of course it requires someone who will eat it. And I finally got someone to say they would take it. So there's that. And mushrooms. As usual, I'll leave a link to a video, and she's talking about how you can add spinach and other things, basically whatever vegetables you like. Zucchini is one that I like, but you have to be careful with it because mushrooms can add water. Zucchini can add even more water. So while that's frying, which is going to take a few minutes, I'll pause this and then I'll get back. Got the vegetables cooked, and I had to turn up the heat and get the water out of the pan because mushrooms do make a lot of water. Now it's time to add the sauce. There we go. Now, I don't need all of this jar, I don't think. Let's just pour in. And, oh yeah, I guess I do. And I had added basil, which the recipe calls for, but I also put in oregano. dough because I like that flavour and the smell. It just adds some. One thing about jars of sauce is they really don't have that much in the way of flavour. So now I'm going to add some of the mushrooms, not cooked, because they'll cook in the, let's go get them. They'll cook in the oven. Okay, added more mushrooms. They'll have a little bit more body to them because they're not thoroughly cooked. But the sauce and everything now has to simmer for a few minutes. I decided to go ahead and add some spinach because I just happened to have a bit in the freezer that I saw, and it'll simmer. So yeah, it's going to be quite a nice lasagna in the end. And so that you don't have to watch paint dry, I'm going to go ahead and pause it again. The work on making corn tortillas is going well. I saw someone who said they had to practice 50 times to get it right, and I can believe it. I've only been able to work on it for a couple of days, one batch of dough. But it is getting to the point where they're kind of beginning to puff up. So I think I'm getting there. I think it might be the way I'm preparing the dough. That might have something to do with it. But once I am able to make real corn tortillas, as the lady whose link I will be sharing said, the tortillas that you can get, the tortilla chips that you can get in the shops, and the flat tortillas that you can get in the shops, not up to scratch at all. And Mexicans don't even use hard taco shells. All of the things that people are doing are not Mexican food. And so I'm looking forward to the series I'm going to be doing, because I'm going to be doing tamales and nachos and tacos, and I can even give what actually is the history of nachos and what can actually be done to call them nachos. Contrary to the belief of apparently quite a few channel creators, pouring a bag of Doritos into a pan and throwing something on it is not nachos. So I'm looking forward to a series of these kinds of things, and as soon as I get corn tortillas mastered, I can start doing that. I must say, I've never before seen pastor on flour tortillas, and we'll get into that as well. So I'll let this simmer and then I'll be back. While I'm simmering that, I need to get the cheese mix going. So I've got ricotta, and as I said, the measurements will be in the recipe that I give you a link to. And they're different to what I'm using because I'm making a much larger pan of lasagna. And you want to also add grated mozzarella. Quite perhaps have everything set up as I had thought, but never mind. What is there cheese in there? Yes, I thought I felt cheese. Cheese. It smells delicious. I must say. I got a good laugh out of someone, a certain poser. She goes by many names and has many channels, said that she could invent anything in the kitchen. She's a firm believer that you can invent anything in the kitchen. But she didn't know that all you have to do to make a biryani that's not spicy is leave out the kashmir peppers. Leave out the chilies, works every time. And I would challenge her then to invent filet. I've been wanting to make a filet gumbo again, but filet gumbo is it's a dish which is specific to a particular part of the southern United States, particularly Louisiana. And indigenous to Louisiana is the sassafras tea. Louisiana and I think Arkansas as well. And those leaves, they take those leaves and make herbs called filet. You cannot invent anything, so I challenge you to invent filet. And since you claim to be in the UK, she's not, it wouldn't be a problem for you to send it to me now, would it, love? You can't invent everything. But the people who say things like that are the people who are inventing everything in their fantasies anyway. And we do still have people who think that online you can pretend to be anything you want to be and get away with it. That was true when the internet was invented. Not now. Anyway, I digress. Now that's the two cheeses mixed together. Now I have to add eggs. How many eggs? 2. Gotta go get my eggs. Okay. I've been shifting things about so that I could have some room. Egg number 1, broke on the shell. Egg number 2. And I must say, I think it would be marvellous, you who have many names of many channels, if you would make some videos of yourself inventing all of this stuff. I think many people would love to see that. I'll tell you one thing, KEB is laughing her backside off right now. If you know, you know. Anyway, I'm mixing that in. It's time to give the sauce a stir. Now back to this. In a medium bowl, and then that's ready to put on top of the other things. Quite well mixed in. Almost looks like cottage cheese in a way, doesn't it? It's a nice look, smell and texture. It smells really nice. And I've pre-grated some Parmigiano Reggiano, 36 months. You can't I don't think the grated Parmesan that you buy, or Parmigiano that you buy in the shops tastes the same at all. I think it's better fresh, and they use a better month. If you buy it in a deli or cheese shop, they use a better age. The older, the better. So now I've had the oven heating, I can get the pan ready. I need to get some space, so let's get hung up here. And now, taking a large pan, I said it was a large lasagna. I was not kidding. The first thing that I want to do, after I turn that off and turn this off, now what I want to do is put some of this on the bottom of the pan. Oh, doesn't that just look so chunky? Then the raw mushroom chunks especially just look so chunky and wonderful. And you just want to cover the bottom of the pan, not too much. Okay, then noodles. I still haven't found a way to fit my pasta machine up here since my kitchen's been refurbished. It's just not enough space, but never mind. Maybe someday. What I really wish I had was a commercial-sized, restaurant-sized kitchen. I've had some very big kitchens, and it still seems to me as though they're never big enough. Because the bigger they get, the more I want to cook. That's why. It's my fault. Because I love to cook. Okay. Now these are rather thin, actually, so I think I'm going to put a second layer. Just because that's how I like it. Other people can do as they choose. There. Then you want to layer it with more of the sauce. Oh, I should get a ladle. That's what I should get. I'm making things too difficult. This should be dry. Got Mexican oregano and several different kinds of seasonings because authentic Mexican cooking actually doesn't use taco seasoning or barbecue sauce. The boxes of barbecue fajita dinners, no. I saw a video title, I think I saved it into my watch later thing, but I've seen a couple of videos actually where a Mexican went with his American friend to Taco Bell and didn't recognize anything that they called Mexican food. But that video was only like about 10 minutes long. The one that I want to watch is substantially longer, and it talks about, the title of it was How North America Has Ruined Mexican Food. And I think it's not that they set out to do that. I think that it's a matter of cultural, the perception of cultural values. When people are from a culture that simply assimilates every culture that comes in to their way of doing things without realizing it, obviously. This is what happens. And then they don't actually know. They don't know any better. They don't know that what they're doing isn't actually Mexican food or isn't actually Chinese food. And when they are confronted with it, they actually think that the person confronting them to challenge the misappropriation and misrepresentation of their culture, well, they have a problem. It's not a problem. They're the ones with the problem. They just need to calm down. No, people have a right to ask that their cultures be respected, and food is actually the most definitive part of culture. It's more important than hairstyles or clothing. And you know how people can get upset about, for instance, people who don't even know what Rastafarianism is, deciding to get dreadlocks as a fashion statement. They do have the right to be upset about that because it's important. So I think it's just a matter of educating people that you can't just pretend that you're from a country you're not from. You can't just pretend to know something you don't. You can't just misappropriate and misrepresent and insult people's cultures and not expect to get an answer. So if people are being offended, why aren't you asking not why, it's their problem, but why? Show me what I'm doing wrong so that I don't keep offending you. In other words, well, I won't finish that sentence. I'll be a bit more mature than they are. Naughty. Anyway, now get that spoon scraped out, because what I'm going to do now is make a layer. Poo. As big as that was, it wasn't enough of the vegetable sauce. Shame. Oh well, never mind. It's all right. Now I'm going to put a layer of the ricotta cheese. Now she puts 2 layers, but when I was watching that, I was thinking to myself, as I say, we can do with these dishes what suits our taste in terms of how much cheese we want to put, not what kind, how much. And because I thought that was just a bit, to my taste, a bit cheesy, and I didn't want the cheese to overtake all the other flavors. So I'm putting just 1 layer of cheese, and not as thick, because it's a larger pan. I need much more cheese, and it is just about going to make it. In fact, I think the thing that frightened people the most was being exposed by not knowing that throwing your toys out of the pram is actually a long-standing, typically British phrase. Got a little scary there, didn't it, love? Never mind. Essentially, they were all throwing their toys out of the pram. I think they even included the blanket and the dummies. Okay. So that is the layer of cheese. I'll make sure that all of the noodle is tucked in and covered so that it doesn't get crispy and hard in the baking process. I have the oven heated to, it says 175 on the recipe. My oven seems to run a little cool, so I did 180, and that's the way it is. If you cook, you know that you just have to figure out how your oven runs. For instance, before I took advice from the Mexican man who was helping me to learn Mexican cooking, I did not know that even on its highest temperature, an induction hob will not get hot enough. It won't have the right temperature, etc. So I bought a little gadget that I'll show you when I'm making those videos. And that's, I think, why it's taking a bit of work, is because I am working on doing it the way it would be done in the country to whom it belongs. There's even a reason why they use corn tortillas, why the only thing they use is corn tortillas, what the significance of corn is. You have to know about people's cultures and respect it if you're going to pretend to speak their language, but most importantly, if you're going to pretend to cook their food. Don't pretend to cook their food. You might as well walk up to their faces and spit. Do it right, or just stop. Now, descend from the soapbox and let's get the Parmesan in. A good layer of Parmesan is the way I want to do it. Again, she did it in layers, but the flavors of these cheeses, I think, would quickly mute out the flavors of all of the vegetables, to me, in my taste, because I've had these dishes where they just have too much cheese in them, and it becomes a question of why did you bother with the vegetables? Just make a cheese lasagna and be done with it. So that's the Parmesan. It is hard work. It's a hard slog grating of fully aged, beautiful Parmigiano Reggiano, but it's worth it in terms of the taste. It really cannot be compared with what you buy already grated or shaved. So now I'm going to put this in the oven and I'll come back when it's done. Baked it for an hour. Now, I didn't want it to burn, so I did cover it with foil for most of that time, and then took the aluminium kitchen foil off and let it bake for another 10 minutes. And as you can see, it's still nice and crispy, it's still nice and brown. Ooh, it's hot. I just took it out, so it's very hot. And it just looks and smells gorgeous. So it was worth the time spent. And I'll put the link to the person whose video I used, and you'll be able to see that I didn't quite do exactly the same things, but you can follow it as you like. And the main thing is it does have the same ingredients and it does have the same process. I just didn't put 2 layers of the cheese because it looked to me like she was putting rather thick layers of the cheese, and I just did not want 2 thick layers of cheese with the layers of vegetables. It just seemed like too much. So it's up to you, of course, but yeah, it's all done. I hope you enjoyed.